I don't really know how to start shows.
Come on now, don't start liking me now.
So yeah, I'm funny compared to, well, you'll see later. I stand for mayhem!
I know a lot of fucking idiots who think a lot of shit is mean-spirited just because it goes against what they believe. But the relief of comedy is it takes things that aren't funny and it allows us to laugh about them for an hour.
We got a purple suit to buy and a gigantic coffin.
Why are you laughing?
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Why You Laughing, a history of comedy podcast. And today, I'm very, very pleased to introduce you to one Stuttering John Melendez. You've asked for it. We're delivering at the end of the year. Figured close the year out with a bang. We have one more episode, I think, this year, but we'll do, I'll tell you guys later what we'll do next week. But yes, Stuttering John is the subject. If you're not aware, which I don't know how you can't be at this point, but if you don't listen to Who Are These Podcasts or the Uncle Rico Show or the Blind Mike Project at times, then maybe you don't know. Stuttering John has been one of the most mocked men on the internet. And so much so that you could say I'm riding the coattails of people who have done this for months and months and years. And we're reaping the benefits with a few views on YouTube. But I'm trying to take a different approach today than other people have, I hope. And in the, Why You Laughing biography sort of style that we do every week, I'm going to try and hold true to that and kind of approach it as if we don't have an opinion on Stuttering John and see if we arrive at the same result by the end of this. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. Hopefully there's some stuff you haven't heard before. And if you want more, obviously you should check out Who Are These Podcasts and the Uncle Rico Show, who are the real, the best of the best, as they say, in the Stuttering John world.
The Godfathers.
That's right. So before we get into it, I just want to tell you, especially if you're new here, check out blindmike.net. That's where you can find all the links to everything. If you want to subscribe to the Patreon, we appreciate it. You get episodes a week early, plus bonus content coming in 2023. Very exciting. Oh, that's the other thing I should say, too. Episodes like this going forward will be Patreon exclusive. And what I mean by that is maybe Stuttering John would transcend that, but we'll do episodes, around the Opie and Anthony world, Howard Stern, Joe Matarese. And if I deem it kind of obscure enough, that'll be Patreon exclusive. So the Joe Matarese episode, part 2, will just be on the Patreon. So if you like that stuff, that's where you got to go to check that out. And if you want to just support the show for free, if you're like, hey, I like the free apps, and that's all I need, then you can also find all the links there. Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Support us that way. We appreciate it. And like I said, blindmike.net is where you can do all that. And for any of you WATP fans out there, me and Carl have joined forces. So listen to Who Are These Socials as well. For now, we're doing that on the WATP feed, but in the new year, I think we'll have our own stuff. So keep an eye out for that in the new year.
Very exciting stuff. And if you're listening to this as it comes out on the 15th on Patreon, tonight at 6, that episode will be out.
Yeah. Every Thursday at 6, we'll be live on YouTube. So give us some super chats. Like I said, we're pretending we don't know Stuttering John, so we don't know what that means yet, but we'll find out.
This is pre that.
Yeah. So the way we're doing it today is Stern to Stephanie Miller, we'll say, from John's time on the Howard Stern Show through the Tonight Show and his brief time on the Stephanie Miller Show. And I suspect the Tonight Show and Stephanie Miller will only talk about briefly. So this is mostly going to be Stern stuff. And if you guys do demand a Stuttering John part 2, then maybe we'll get to some of the other stuff. I just feel like Uncle Rico and Carl have done such a thorough job breaking down Stuttering John's podcast that I was like, is there any ground that hasn't been covered? So we should go with the early stuff. So we're focusing mostly on Stern.
This is like we have a download quota by the end of the year.
Yeah, we're trying to cram it in. We're talking Stuttering John, Kanye West, and I don't know, Trump.
Yeah, Nick Fuentes.
Just making the algorithm go crazy.
Say Nick Fuentes 5 times.
Yeah, so one thing I do kind of want to focus on, at least at the beginning here, is that Stuttering John has or had a purpose in entertainment and kind of a big place when you think about it. Like if you remove who Stuttering John is as a guy, and if you know what, if he retired after the Tonight Show, I think we would think of him as a legend. We would think, remember that guy? He would go up to celebrities and ask them questions. Oh, the set of balls on that guy. Like he would have this kind of legendary, the same way you think of, Beetlejuice, which I understand that as a human being, maybe you don't want to be compared to Beetlejuice, but like in Stern fan lore, Beetlejuice and Eric the Midget and these people rank pretty high. And Stuttering John has tainted that image because he believes he's so much more than that. When in reality, he's kind of a whack packer. He thinks he's on the same playing field as, Robin, Fred, Gary, the people that Howard would consider integral to the show, Artie, Jackie. My assessment would be he was kind of a step below that, but he was important and a big part of that show in the 90s. And most people would say that's when Stern was at its peak. You could argue the Artie era was better, but at least as far as listeners, Stuttering John was there when they had the most listeners of any radio show ever. So we're going to start by focusing on what Stuttering John was good at. And the main thing that he was known for on the Stern Show were the celebrity interviews. So we have a few of those to play for you. I think the first one is what, Tommy Lasorda?
No, Ted Williams.
Oh, it's Ted. Oh, this is Ted Williams? Oh, great.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So this is the type of shit, if you don't know, they would send out John to like red carpet events or, for sports, like all-star games and things like that, big press conferences. They would send John out and Howard, Jackie, and Fred would write funny questions for him to ask, uncomfortable questions. And this is the type of shit that he would ask.
By any chance, did you ever accidentally fart in the catcher's face?
Pardon?
By any chance, did you ever accidentally fart in the catcher's face?
Who the hell are you? For John's sake, that kind of damn question. See you later.
Ted Williams is a war veteran. He's not putting up with that shit. But that's funny. And there is a skill to that, or whatever you want to call it. I think the word talented gets thrown around, like, I think too much now in podcast where people argue, is this guy talented? Does he have more talent than this guy? I think it gets thrown around too much. So I don't know if I can call it a talent, but there's a skill to what John is doing there. Like the ability, that's not necessarily an easy thing. People get nervous and awkward. It seems easy when you're watching it. And when you know the end result will be making, hundreds of thousands or millions of people laugh, then it seems worth it. But in the moment, that is a tough thing to do, I would think. So and it's funny. Like you have to have a certain delivery. Now, granted, part of what makes it funny is involuntary, that he stutters, but there is a skill to that. So as we'll see here, it takes more and more balls. Is the next one Morton Downey?
Yep.
Yeah, so this is one of the most legendary clips in Stuttering John's catalog. I guess, I don't know the full context. I'm not a Stern historian. The episode I saw, they were talking about it on the old Channel 9 show, is where they were discussing it. It seems like there was kind of a long-running feud with Morton Downey. I don't really know the backstory. But obviously he hates Howard from this clip. Yeah. And he does not take too kindly to John's questioning.
Would your wife go and dance topless in clubs for the money if you really needed it?
Would my wife dance topless in clubs for money?
Yeah.
She never did dance topless.
I know, but if you really need the money, since I know that you are bankrupt.
You see, I wouldn't ask my wife to do that. I wouldn't ask my wife. I wouldn't ask my lady to do that at all. I got too much class.
Holy look at this. What are you saying? You just shut up. I'll kick your ass out.
You kick no one's ass.
Don't get away from
no one's ass.
Look at this. Look at this. What is this?
You want to start kicking ass? You don't throw nothing from my wife.
Look at this. Huh? Unbelievable. I'll see you in court. Relax. Hit me. The guy just hit me. Did you see that? He just popped me. The guy just hit me.
so interesting because now when you hear John yell, "I'll see you in court," we know too much to find that funny.
Oh, you're really serious.
You know what I mean? Like we know far too much to find that funny. But at the time, that's hilarious. To have the presence of mind to just be like, "I'll see you in court, pal." That's very funny. In that moment where this celebrity is manhandling you. Just this old grump Morton Downey. And in these clips, there's a much longer interaction out there if you want to go watch the full clip. And to me, Morton Downey is coming off as very funny, like for comedy sake, but he's not trying to. You know what I mean? Like he seemed like a real miserable prick. I don't know much about him, but him and Stern had this rivalry, and John obviously antagonized him to get that sort of reaction out of him. So that's great. John was a good antagonist. If I could put his skill set into one word, it would be antagonist. He was a very good antagonist. And there's another clip kind of showing that in a little bit. But first, we also have, just to keep building the examples here, the Billy Crystal interview.
Yep.
This is, and I mean, the more we're going through it, it's like, Fred, Jackie, and Howard wrote these questions. It's based on the relationships Howard built. So, of course, like, this really is Howard's creation. And I think that's what John never quite understood. Like, while I'm saying, yes, it does take skill, like, listen to this. The reason he's getting this reaction is because of Howard Stern. John kind of thinks it's all him. But just listen and, see what you think.
Big fan.
Who are you?
Paul. How's it going?
From where?
From XRK. Are you glad that you're the only guy who can handle the Oscars?
I'm not the only guy who can handle the Oscars.
Well, David didn't do as good job as you, Bill.
David did great. I love what David did on the show. He was terrific.
Will there be a Mr. Saturday Night too?
Yes, there will.
Oh, yeah? Okay. How many years were you married before you cheated on your wife?
So you take this to Howard, right? And you can...
He starts laughing.
Howard's stupid ass, okay?
Well, you don't like Howard anymore, Bill?
No, because Howard dumps on me all the time, and it's just fun when you have a thing like this, okay? And now you'll do this on a show, and you'll all laugh and have a good time, but it's not fun,
Well, Billy, we're all big fans of yours, Billy.
Yeah, right.
No, so really, I'm a big fan of yours.
Good. Then you don't come and insult still.
Nice of Billy to have a little fun with it. Jesus.
Seems like it was fresh off the divorce.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, where it's like, it's how I don't think John would have gotten that reaction from Billy. Like, he realized this is a Howard guy, and so he kind of, ramps it up a little bit and gets angrier than he would otherwise. That's what never quite connects with John. Like, John is seeing the success of these little things and thinking like, oh, I'm a big star and the Howard Stern show needs me, which is will be a theme of today's episode. The one I wanted to include, but could not find the clip of for whatever reason, is I think his best question. And again, I'm guessing Jackie wrote this one. But I think his best question was to Ringo Starr, partly because it's to a Beatle. And I think it's kind of like the Patrice thing we talked about, where it's like, you need him to answer a certain way. You need him to play into your hand for this joke to work. And it does. So unfortunately, we just have John explaining the joke. So let's hear how that works.
I saw the questions and I said to Baba Boohai, I said, I go, is this going to screw up my music career? And he goes, no. And
hold on a second.
I go,
I'm sorry. Again, we're trying to play it down the middle here, but the idea that this would disturb his music career. John, where are you working? You work for the Howard Stern show. Also, is Ringo Starr going to be like, find that guy and crush him? Obviously, he's in the music business.
I think he's got some pull there.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is Ringo Starr going to be like, clearly this guy is in music. We need to destroy his life.
Ringo feels threatened by zero people musically. He's in the Beatles.
Just McCartney. That's the only when he's like, this motherfucker.
Yeah, he's still alive. Once he's dead, it's just Ringo.
Sorry, John. Please continue.
Career. And he goes, no. And I go, all right. But I'm like, this is the Beatles, my favorite band of all time.
I know.
So I went, and this is in front of like all the radio. Everyone's worshiping Ringo.
Right, royalty.
And here I go to the mic, and I go, Ringo, what did you do with the money? And he goes, what money?
I don't remember.
I go, the money your mom gave you for singing lessons. And I was like, I can't believe I'm doing this. He was a good sport. He's like, I bought fish and chips. But it was like, that was like one of the ones I was like so freaking nervous.
All right. And you know, you grow up idolizing the band, and that you finally get to talk to the guy, and you have to do that.
Yeah. Well, it's
Thank God he was cool.
Yeah, thank God.
Yeah, what would have
Imagine Ringo strangling John.
That'd have been great. That would have been fucking great.
But yeah, so it's a good line. What did you do with the money? Because everyone shits on Ringo's drumming, obviously. So it's a funny line. That's probably what John would get. Like if he gets recognized, that's probably the quote he gets most. You know what I mean? Like where someone will say, "Hey, what'd you do with the money?" That sort of a thing.
That was before it was hack.
Yeah. So that's what John was best known for, was the celebrity questions. And they never I think they had other people do it over the years, but no one with the success that John had. Now, where John gets a little crazy is he says that Sacha Baron Cohen ripped off Stuttering John with the Ali G show, and Robert Smigel ripped off Stuttering John with Triumph the Insult Comic Dog. I would suggest, if they're ripping off anyone, it would be Howard. It was not John's idea to do this, but also those are completely different characters and scenarios. Like the work Sacha Baron Cohen has to do to get these interviews with these people is so much different than what John was doing.
Yeah, John's told to go somewhere at a certain time.
Yeah, so that's the arrogance we end up dealing with John, where he's like, anyone who asks a goofy question is ripping me off. But like I said, antagonizing was his skill set. So is the next thing the AJ Benza thing?
Yes.
So AJ Benza, for anyone not familiar, I think he's been on WATP not that long ago. But for anyone not familiar with AJ Benza, he was like a celebrity gossip type of guy. I think he worked for the E! Network while Howard's show was also on there. And he was auditioning. They would bring these people in. Like when Artie Lang got that job, they would bring in Adam Carolla, Jimmy Kimmel, Joe Rogan. A bunch of guys would come in and sit in that seat. Gilbert, obviously, Bob Levy. And one of those people, I think, for a brief time was AJ Benza. And excuse me, he had some show that people were goofing on him for, and the callers are being brutal to him. Now, something Artie would always point out was that when Howard wanted to shit on someone but not look like the bad guy, the brilliance of Howard was he would go, AJ, yeah, I really liked your show. I don't know why so many people are dumping on it. Jim on Long Island, what do you think? And they're like, you fucking suck, AJ. Howard knows what they're going to say. But he doesn't have to be the bad guy. He just goes to the calls.
Right.
So this is an example of that happening, although AJ doesn't blame Howard. He blames the call screener. So if you don't know, when John wasn't out, there's not too often where you can go out and ask celebrities questions, and they couldn't find anything else for John to do, really. He would prepare Howard's breakfast sometimes. But he wasn't like a skilled producer or anything. They liked having him around, so they found a job for him. They just put him on call screening. And this is how AJ Benza dealt with John on the phones.
Hey, I got a question for AJ.
Go ahead.
Did your show get canceled yet, loser?
Yeah.
Oh.
Chris, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I suffer from insomnia, and I tried sleeping pills, I tried sedatives, I tried everything, and I finally found something that cures my insomnia. AJ After Hours.
Hey, man.
What is this? Come on.
Let me tell you something right now. No, it's okay. It's all right.
So pause for a second, just to give you perspective on what I was talking about. I'm sure John on the phone screener puts up, guy has insomnia solved by AJ Benza's show. And yet when Howard hears that, he goes, oh, come on. What are you doing? Why would you say that?
Or it was like, this guy has a question for AJ and they didn't listen.
True, but my point is, I think Howard always kind of knew what was happening.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's hear AJ's reaction.
No, it's okay. It's all right. If you can say that, but I will do one thing before I leave today.
Yes.
I'm gonna grab Stuttering John by the face and I'm gonna punch him right in his friggin' head.
So he's not reacting to it well. And now when I say this was what John did well, he had the presence of mind to say, all right, AJ's being bothered by the phone calls. Howard is laughing. That's the one attribute John had, that the one instinct he had that was correct. He's like, hey, Howard's laughing. Let me continue this. So this is the next call they took, I believe.
You're on the air. Go ahead.
Hey, Howard, the only thing more embarrassing is the AJ After Hours show.
That's John right now.
You know,
that's John right now.
And you know who's really embarrassed? Even more embarrassed of that show than AJ?
Who?
His hair. It jumped right off his head to get away from him.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
I knew it was John. I knew it.
Get him in right now. I swear to Christ, when I leave, you're doing it. All right, let me tell you something.
You fat bastard.
You better leave early. No, there'll be tomorrow.
I'm gonna smack you silly, you.
Tomorrow's story. Actually, the next break.
Yeah.
After the break, come
Hey,
back.
Howard, AJ stands for arrogant jerk, by the way.
Oh, what happened with you guys?
Stands for what?
Arrogant jerk.
I swear
what
to God,
happened with
the
you
next
two?
break? Watch what happens. I don't care if I ever come back again. I'm gonna go in there and punch you.
Hey, listen, I have some free hats for a little.
I'll go right now.
A good wig for you to wear back here, AJ.
I'll go right now.
No.
What are you doing? I'm gonna beat you worse than Chuck Zito.
AJ, what happened between you two? Oh, he's going to go beat John's ass.
But why is John doing that?
I don't know.
John's nuts.
I do like how he's surprised by this.
What? What did I do?
Jesus, here goes. You want me? Come on, mother. Christ, come on, mother. Come on, bro. Come on, bro. I'm up right now. I'll beat your ass right now, AJ. I'm up right now, mother.
Go home, AJ. Go home.
Oh, really?
No, really. Just for now. I'm not saying go home like get out. I'm saying like go home like calm down.
AJ.
Yeah, shut up.
You can't come someplace and punch a guy in the face. AJ, you can't.
Excuse me, how many times this guy...
I know, but you can't do that. You can't take a joke, AJ?
Too many times, John.
So many times.
Oh no! Now again, we have the misfortune of knowledge, of knowing things how things played out with John, where he goes, "You can't take a joke, AJ."
I will say, John didn't friggin' back down. He started throwing bombs back at him.
No, I bet John's a fairly tough guy in person. You know, I don't think he backs down from shit like that. Although it is weird for a guy like that to tell you how tough he is and then go behind the scenes and try to sue you and, get your YouTube videos taken down. But again, we're getting ahead of ourselves. We don't know that about him yet.
That's true. We'll never know, even during this episode.
Yeah. We won't know anything if he does anything like that. Just a little funny that he says, "Oh, you can't take a joke, AJ."
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. So that's the problem. And we will learn this about John, that he loves goofing on people. And he knows that is how you become the apple of Howard's eye. So, he was a very good boy there. But when he gets goofed on, not so fun then. Then it's all very, very personal.
Wait a minute, Howard.
Yeah, so, that's the type of shit. That's the reason John was around, for context. And like I said, that's a very important guy. You can think of characters at Barstool now where it's fucking Rico Bosco is a maniac. But he's an interesting character. So as long as you don't do too much, then when you cross a certain line and people learn what you're outside of that character, that's when things get shaky. But as long as you stay in the lines of that character, you can be a legend. And that's what Stuttering John was for a time. And so where are we going now? Is this the crazy cabbie thing?
No, that's later. This is the audio of Multi-Talented, the theme song.
Oh, right. We're going back in time just a bit. I could not find. It's very funny. I apologize to Dabblers Anonymous because I'm sure they get this a lot with a lot of different shows. Dabblers Anonymous, a great subreddit that follows John. and they post a lot of clips on there. So I posted something saying, hey, we're doing Why You Laughing on Stuttering John. Do you guys have any of his early clips, particularly his first day on air is what I was looking for. And someone replied like, oh, another podcast we have to do the grunt work for. I was like, oh, gee, I'm sorry. I didn't realize.
Never mind. I'll find it.
Yeah, no. So I couldn't find it anywhere, unfortunately, his first day. But this is pretty early on. And it's when he presents some of his work to Howard. So like I said, there's a reason John was on the phones. You know, they and this is something I dealt with at Barstool. I relate, like I said about Fez Whatley, I relate to John in many ways. Like I never found my niche when I was an intern, partly because I was lazy. And I think John has some of that as an intern. Like I think when this stuff gets rejected is when he started to shut down as a producer, maybe. But this was him trying. He said, "Hey, like I'm very musically gifted. Let me present it to Howard." And this was Howard's reaction.
Oh, whoops.
Anyway, so John, a stuttering intern, evidently wants to be a musician. So he said, oh, I want to write a song for the show. And I said, oh, that'd be pretty funny. Let's hear this. And this is, are you in college?
Yeah.
Are you a music major?
No, I'm a film and TV major.
Oh, I see. So you're multifaceted.
Yeah, I think, you got to try a few things.
And you have a band. So this is your whole band.
No, this is just me, basically. And a guy who did the studio, this guy, my friend, Mike Sapone did it. But I mean, I'm singing, I play the bass on, I play guitar, and
okay.
And there's two of them, and first one's but then they're short, so
And so, first of all, it's funny to hear Howard just go, "Yes, you're multifaceted." But it's interesting. We don't get this anymore. Subdued, timid, unconfident John. You don't hear that anymore. But this was him very early on. Before he had gotten his feet wet, and you hear he's very timid and not sure how things are going to go. Doesn't realize the world famous podcaster he's going to become one day. So it's interesting to hear that tone of voice. And I meant to say this at the start of the show, but I feel like this is a good time to mention it. John got his start there. He was at NYU. He originally went to some community college on Long Island, and then got into NYU. And he made friends with. Are you familiar, Craig, with comedian Mitch Fatel?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a name. I know the name, being a stand-up. I think if you're familiar enough with stand-up, you know the name.
Yeah, if you listen to the comedy serious channels, he pops up all the time.
Yeah, pretty successful comedian. I don't know much of his stuff really, but he's had some success. But he started as an intern for the Howard Stern show. Based on my listening, he was not really a character there. They thought he was very boring. They didn't realize he was a funny comic. But Mitch Fatel had to leave. He had to get a real paying job. And he kind of had to leave abruptly. But he said he didn't want to leave them high and dry. So he went to Baba Booey and said, hey, I've got this guy, Stuttering John. This guy, John Melendez, wants to work for the show. And he's like, I don't know if it's a big deal, but he does stutter. And Gary was like, bring him in. But you gotta at least give John this, because everyone says, hey, John only got hired because he stutters. They did say in the Stern-thology thing that they did for Sirius, they do say that they recorded his interview and never played it because it wasn't bad enough. He didn't really stutter that much and everything. So there must have been something that suggested he would be a good fit there in that interview. So let's at least give him that. I suspect it was not these songs, though.
No.
Based on the reaction.
All right, now we're rocking. See? Then I'm like...
Pause 1 second. I'm sorry. I should have said Howard is the biggest radio show in America at this point. Yeah, you know what? I'm not sure if that's entirely true, because in the late 80s, I bet Rush Limbaugh and some of those guys were probably bigger than Howard.
I don't know.
But he's pretty close. He's getting to be the king of all media, basically, if not already there. And John presented these songs to him as, hey, you should play this as your theme song. You should change the theme song that is played every morning to start the Howard Stern show to this. So that's the context.
All right, now we're rocking. See, then I'm like,
Here's a story about a Jew's success.
what?
A Jew's success.
A Jew?
You know, I just.
How would I play that?
Well, it gets good. I mean, it's
a Jew's success.
Yeah, I mean, it's good though. I mean, it's not like I'm not making.
Jews. I'm a half Jew. I'm not even. I deny that part of
I couldn't say half Jew in the line. It wouldn't fit.
Well, why would you concentrate? Here's
watch. It goes on. It's like the history of
story about a Jew's success. What is it? That whole Jew?
I know. I wasn't going
to. Are you a Jew?
No, I'm not Jewish.
It's bad when a guy who's not Jewish says that.
I told you, if you scratch the surface of every intern we have, you find a maniac.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
I told you that.
I was thinking like this is the first normal guy we had.
Robin, you have no idea. By the way, for any non-Stern fans out there, if you're confused by that line where he's like, "I'm a half Jew," that's a thing. I don't get the bit, but he used to say he was half Jewish, half Italian. So I don't know what that bit, but that's just what the reference is. But it's very funny to hear him like, and John not understand why he's pointing it out. He's like, well, I couldn't say half Jew. And Howard's like, no. Why would you reduce me to a Jew? I'm a successful broadcaster. Why would you just be like, he's a Jew's success?
Yeah, that. And I mean, we'll see. I think John knows what he's doing here.
It's possible. That's interesting because there has always been. That's a very interesting point, Craig.
Well, because this clip we're about to play is what made me think this.
Yeah, there's always been kind of a debate of how much John is aware of himself. I lean towards the opposite of what you're saying, but I'm willing to hear the argument. So let's play it.
It gets good.
All right, okay. What does it say, Jew boy?
Story.
No, it goes, poor little Jew boy thought he was a coon. And then you keep going.
Poor little Jew boy thought he was a coon.
That right there, I'm like, come on. He knows what he's doing.
Oh, I disagree. I think he thinks he knows what he's doing. I think he thinks this is the Howard Stern show. We're edgy and crazy. Let me throw out some racial slurs.
Well, I think
they're like, Jesus, there's just no, as Louis would say, I'm all for it, but there's just no call for this.
No, I think you're correct, but then I think he's playing oblivious when he isn't.
And therein lies the real question with John is how much is he really aware? That's a good point.
Now he's not doing it at all, but back right here, I'm like, this guy knows what he's doing.
I wonder. And you know what? There's a clip. I don't have it today. Maybe we could do that in part 2, a good dissection of John. But there is a clip where Howard's dressing down John, and he goes, no, he calls him an idiot. But then he goes, you're not an idiot. You're not as dumb as these. You're smarter than all of these people. You know exactly what you're doing.
Exactly.
And so there's an interesting element where you might be right, at least in Howard's eyes. But yeah, was that the whole clip?
No, I just started. It just started, so I started it over, so we get the whole thing.
Okay, perfect.
It gets good.
All right, okay. What does it say, Jew boy?
Story.
No, it goes, poor little Jew boy thought he was a coon. And then you keep going.
Poor little Jew boy thought he was a coon.
No, you gotta listen. It's good. You gotta, please.
That's
please.
good.
He's not authentic.
Ashamed of yourself?
No,
Thought he was a coon.
I like convincing someone it's good.
Huh?
I like the idea of No, you don't understand. It's good.
No, see, that's what I'm saying. I think he knows it's bad on purpose, and he's doing this for attention.
Like if I was playing for this podcast for someone, and they're like, "My God, this is horrible," and I'm like, "No, you don't understand. It's good. It's actually the opposite of what you think. It's very good.
How are you gonna love it?"
Howard is the king.
We don't use words like coon and Jew boy.
Oh man,
way worse.
Is that what you think I do for a living?
No, Howard. I
don't call blacks coons.
Way worse.
I thought it's really funny. I mean, if you listen
that is
to it.
very funny. Yes.
What's the hell wrong with you, John?
Staring bastard! I call your name.
What the hell's wrong with you? What kind of thing is that?
I can't believe believe that.
You know, this song is so like. I mean, I'm kissing your butt so much in this song. Just because the first 2 lines. I mean, you can't judge a book by the first.
A lot's coming through with you, man.
Oh man, I am not.
When do you start?
Where was that synagogue desecrated?
No, wait. I am not. I am the farthest thing I am is prejudice. I really am.
Oh yeah, I can see it.
So, a lot going on in that clip. First of all, that's why Robin was there. Like, that's the main reason Robin is there when something like that is thrown out, to be like, oh, really, John? Is it funny? Like, that's Robin's main purpose, I would say, on that show. But to Craig's point about the language, obviously Howard's being a little phony there when he goes, we don't use. What would make you think we use words like this? My goodness. I mean, just go through some of the archives. Yeah, much worse is blurted out. But I think Howard does have a point there where it's gratuitous. Like, it's, and you know, people would accuse Howard of that. But like, there's no, you're just literally saying that without any context. You're just saying, like, this is how I think of black people, you know, which is bizarre. And imagine that. I think Howard's greater point is, this is in the theme song. Like, I'm going to play this every day.
A Jew boy story. He thought he was a blank. Yeah, great.
Yeah,
great idea.
Is the next one still in the same trend?
Yeah, it's Howard saying what he thinks his true intentions are.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
Listen to me for a second. You know what he thought, Robin? He thought that what was going to happen here is that I was going to hear this song, and not only was I going to like it, but I was going to send you into a real recording studio.
No, I did not.
A full-piece band, have you do the whole thing.
No,
I know you.
And it'd be the official opening of the show?
Yeah, every day we'd play it.
Yep, that was certainly his intention. And that's what you got to say about Howard. And maybe he's lost this skill or chooses not to use it, whatever. But he was a very perceptive guy. And that's what I know, like, doing shows with Kirk, he'll throw out things about people where I'm like, you're way off on this guy. Like, I'm like, no. There's no way he's going to stab you in the back eventually. And then sure enough, like, it takes, a month and a half and he's proven right. And that's something Howard was great at also, where it's like he could peg people in a way where you're like, holy shit, he really zeroed in on that years before it reared its ugly head.
Right.
This next now what?
We are at he's being accused of copying Howard.
Oh, okay. So is this the Friends of Howard Stern thing?
It might be in that string.
Well, let's play it and see what I was talking about when I made this note.
Wait, shit, did I do the thing right? Yeah, I did.
I was trying to listen to John's show the other day. I couldn't handle it.
What is this problem?
Oh, I'm okay. I know what this is. So John had a midday show, or afternoon show. It was a midday show. It was like an hour he did after the Howard Stern show. So the idea was kind of K-Rock in New York was the flagship station for CBS or Infinity Broadcasting, whatever it was at the time. And, so you'd have Howard in the mornings. And then the idea, which very smart by Howard, was, and probably the station as well, I guess, keep some characters on somewhat related to the show. So you've almost got that element of Howard Stern all day. So they gave Stuttering John an hour where he spins records and intros the songs. So that's what Howard's talking about here when he says he's trying to be like him.
I was trying to listen to John's show the other day. I couldn't handle it.
What is this problem?
I don't know. He has a radio show on after mine here in New York. I don't know what he does. He's on the air yelling at the listeners on the phone and calling them rat bastards, and it's kind of like.
In fact, I've heard the show a lot lately.
Yeah, me too.
And he seems to just curse, and he thinks that's comedy.
Yeah, I know. He's cursing every minute. He's like, "Goddamn rat bastards," and
the F word all the time being bleeped.
Yeah. He goes, "Hey, stop," and it'll beep. I don't know what he's doing, but it's kind of, I think, supposed to be like me, like when I yell at a listener, but he does it.
Guess, huh?
He seems to get pissed off at him for no reason. He seems to just want to provoke them.
See, it's always funnier to me when the audience is yelling at John. They usually are making a point.
Yeah.
So this is a point that remains true today. John, to his own admission, if you go back in that Sternthology thing I mentioned before, the history of Stuttering John, they interview him, even though it was on Sirius. It's weird that he would allow his voice to be used on there. but they interview him, and he's saying he's talking about his time at NYU, and saying like he wants to be in film. And he's like, I don't know how to be an actor, so maybe if I go to NYU, I could be a director and make films. So John never really had an interest in radio. He, pretends to, for lack of a better term, because that's what he got successful in. So like now John is podcasting as if he always has been a radio guy, when in reality, what you're hearing Howard point out here is that he has no passion for radio. He has no format that he himself wants to follow. Also, to be fair to John, he's in his 20s or early 30s here. So relatively young. So he might not be fully formed, and he's new to doing a show by himself. So he, as a broadcaster, is not fully formed. So again, to use me as the example, that's what I would do when I was an intern, and try and be like, okay, what's the Barstool way of answering this? What would Portnoy say, or what would the fans want me to say, or whatever? I think that's kind of your instinct when you're young and you don't know what the fuck you're doing. So there's part of that, and there's part of John just trying to be Howard because he sees a successful guy. And so I think Howard's absolutely right. And even now, if you listen to John's podcast, there's his entire persona, as much as he's like, Howard's a dick and all of this, he shits on Howard, but his entire persona is essentially ripping off Howard and doing the things the way he thinks Howard would do them.
Yeah. He realized the juggernaut that the show was, and then he changed it. And we don't know this yet, but the directing and acting doesn't work out, I would imagine. He created a feature film. I won't say go to Patreon and patreon.com/Blind Mike and watch that with us to decide for yourself. Yep.
But he had a feature film, so I can't say it completely didn't work out.
Well, you be the judge. Patreon.com/Blind Mike.
Yeah. All right. What's next?
Howard's advice for him.
I think this is pretty sage advice that falls on deaf ears.
Yeah, I love you.
I know you do. You call me every day, you jackass.
Yeah, that's to John. Yeah, you jackass.
That's like the premiere.
Like whatever words I use on the
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Hey, jackass,
that's right.
rat bastard.
You invented jackass. I forgot.
No, I didn't invent the word, you idiot. I gave you the freedom to use it.
That's right. You did.
That's right.
You did, and I'm not angry about
You think people said jackass on the radio
Probably,
20 years ago?
I don't think people did anything. They didn't.
They didn't do anything.
But I'm your fan.
Be yourself.
I am myself. What do you? I am myself.
You sound forced, is what I'm saying.
I'm not.
When you're yelling at the listeners, you sound like you're trying to compact into 2 minutes.
That's what you were going to say because you
John,
can't accept
do you think that I'm a good critic of radio?
No, not for me.
Not for you?
Never for me.
Okay.
Because you are only going to accept me as a guy who came in here at 22 years old and got your coffee, and it'll never change.
Hey, forgive me. I'll never try and help you again.
How old
Show's
are you
great.
now, by the way?
How old are you?
31.
Okay.
That's what we thought.
It's just,
Isn't he passing himself off as he's passing himself as a young intern?
Yeah.
No, I'm not. That's what I was, and I don't expect you to like anything I do.
No, I like a lot of things you do. I like when you go out and ask questions.
Yeah, of course, because that's something that you did.
Right.
Yeah. So of course,
I'm sorry. I don't think it's funny when you yell at the listeners.
It's like if you're doing.
It's so interesting to hear someone say, like, I think you're a good judge of radio talent, except when it comes to me. I'm you have no perspective on that, John, to step back and say, why am I the only person that he's not able to judge correctly? That's so interesting. Now, here's the weird thing about John is he'll stumble onto a point every once in a while by accident. And I think the point to be made there is Howard's ego is pretty huge. And we see that now where he's, but like with Artie, for example, you know, I'm going to disagree with the point I was just making. Because you look at Artie Lang, Artie was allowed to go do stand-up whenever he wanted. He was allowed to make Beer League while he was working on the show. He was allowed to take time off for that to make a movie. Like,
Funny movie.
Yeah, Howard saw talent in Artie and said, go thrive, go do what you can with that talent. With John, he says, this is a man who is untalented. Mm-hmm. And I don't want him ruining my tarnishing my brand, you know?
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, there's obviously an ego to Howard. So like, that's the point where it's like, I get what John's saying, but the idea that he wouldn't to some degree acknowledge, if John was doing a great show, people would call up and say, Howard, you're being too hard on the guy. I love the hour he does in the radio.
Right. But then they also, you know, they're like, oh, he's getting yelled at for screaming at us. So
yeah, it's a fun bit to pile on John, but it's just, I have ears, so it's hard to, you know, my ears work fine. So it's hard to argue that John's a great broadcaster.
This next one's the cabbie one, by the way.
Okay, so this was another seminal moment in John's career. Was he did these like celebrity boxing type things. He fought Crazy Cabbie, and I think there's just an interesting glimpse into some of the interactions John had back in the day. So Crazy Cabbie, I don't know much about him. I believe he had a show on that same in the same vein as John did. I think he had like a music show on K-Rock for at least a brief time as well. But he's, you know, a whack packer for lack of a better term. I don't know exactly where he ranks in Stern fandom, but he's in studio and him and John are talking shit and they have this fight that they're promoting, like a celebrity boxing sort of thing.
Oh, so you are going to train?
Oh, yeah, I'm training with Buddy McGirt. You know the name?
So you're that afraid, huh?
I'm not afraid.
Oh, okay.
Like I said, Angry Black, I respected Angry Black. Angry Black, you know, he challenged everybody. I didn't really know Angry Black's story.
Hold on.
But I didn't have anything against Angry Black. To me, that was a show. We had fun with it, you know.
Oh, really? So you weren't serious? Hold on. Wait, John, that was a show? So the whole time that you were yelling at him, you were just not serious?
It's called selling the fight, John.
Oh.
Shut your pie hole.
Oh, okay.
I didn't put anybody on. John, are we not entertainers? Are we not entertainers? Do you not go and try to make people laugh with your stupid little comedy shows?
I don't know if you're.
I don't know if you incessantly.
I don't know if you're an entertainer.
On the show that you
what have you done to entertain?
That you pre-record because they won't even let you in the studio.
What have you done to entertain? You're not an entertainer. You're half a fag.
Yeah.
Oh, now you could say I just threw that clip in there to show that John uses words like that, but that would be a ridiculous claim.
I do have a drop whenever you want it from maybe that movie he has in the future.
Let's avoid it. He's already thrown it out once.
Just saying.
But yeah, so that, yeah, I did that as a nod to WATP fans saying that, listen, I get it. You know, I get why we attack this guy. But if we're talking about Stuttering John in the 90s, what you hear there is Cabbie throw out that, you know, he does this dumb show. This is where John is becoming egotistical.
Yes.
He's becoming a guy who now is plugging his shows nonstop, thinks he's this great DJ, he's starting fights with people, blah, blah, blah. So I believe that culminates in our next clips, right? This is, you know, sort of the big finale of the great Stuttering John midday show.
I was going to say, what a segue when you're thinking that, you know, his ego is inflated. The way he sits on this couch right now,
it's pretty wild.
It's so enraging.
So I'll set this up a little bit. Stuttering John, the midday show is called Out to Lunch, I believe. And Rob Cross comes in. Opie and Anthony fans might remember Rob Cross, who at the time, I hate to say this because I'm going to defend the guy and he's one of my brothers. But he went by the radio name Chuck Roast.
Yep.
Pretty tough luck. But what you should know about Chuck Roast, aka Rob Cross, is he was the new program director for K-Rock at the time. And what a lot of these guys do is try and, you know, bring their own guys in, shake up the station a little bit. And so Chuck Roast came in and did that. Also important to note, the reason I call him one of my brothers, I think he's legally blind. I know O&A would make allusions to that as well. I don't know what his condition is. I don't know, you know, how blind he is. I don't know if he's able to drive, anything like that. But I mentioned it for a reason. which is coming up. But this is just kind of the presentation of Stuttering John losing his show.
Have your meeting now? You want to have it in private?
John,
Do it now. Do it now.
Oh, I'm up for it now.
Is it bad news?
It depends, you know. I mean,
Depends on if he wants to keep this job.
Depends if you're John or not.
It's bad news for the.
Good news. In other words, it's good news for the listeners and bad news for John. What is the news?
No, I just don't want to do out to lunch anymore.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, so
What do you want to do?
In other words, John doesn't have his show anymore.
So I'm out to lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah, John, you're out to
Gee,
lunch.
that's good news.
Well, I plan to do it without the sound effects, but you know,
this is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, you he wouldn't do this on the air. Poor Chuck.
I like Chuck.
I didn't want to do it on the air, but you know, you bring John, and it's like, you know, what am I gonna do? Say I'm not gonna do it, and then do it 5 minutes later? You know?
Yeah, that would be uncomfortable too.
That would be weird.
Well, there you go. Second time I've been fired.
Yeah, you always get that show back.
I was promised I wouldn't get fired this time if I accepted the job 2 years ago.
I thought I had.
Oh, John.
I
happens to everybody.
Tenure.
I thought my job was tenured.
I'm like a.
What do you want to do with
professor.
that time?
You know, I think it's you know, it's tough for the people who are on after Howard to go for an hour and stop for an hour and then go for an hour.
I agree.
Again.
I don't know why they ever did that.
So why not have me go on right after Howard?
Because I mean. Now I'm stuttering. No, you barely put any effort into your show. I've been here 2.5 months, and you record your show, and that's it.
Wow, a whole lot of time to digest.
Yeah, well, that was, I mean, honestly, credit to Chuck for being very honest there at the end. So I guess John would pre-record the show during Howard's show, which seems like, I think if I'm Howard, I would be a little annoyed at that. Although maybe he just has nothing to do. I don't know. That seems like a weird arrangement that they have. But what you should know, by the way, like right before that clip, John is one of the people egging him on to do it on the air. Like Chuck Roast is like, hey, you know, I have to talk to John later, but I don't want to do it on the air. And John's like, nah, come on. And so he's like, all right, well, I'm taking away your show. And then John's like, why? He's like, well, you don't do anything. So just keep that in mind as John gets more and more agitated with this guy that he did ask for.
But let's be honest, it was going on here no matter what.
What do you mean?
If John said no, Howard would have been like, nah, just do it now.
Oh, of course. Yeah, that's true. But yeah, let's hear. John takes this very well. He takes it all in stride, I think, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, okay.
Well, there you go.
That was great radio. You got fired right on the air.
Well, you know, I
feel bad for you, though. I don't. I know how it is.
I think John took it pretty well, actually.
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
Nah, you whine like a little bitch for like, what?
Oh, 5 minutes, little bitch. See, this is the kind of thing. This is where, little bitch, you cross-eyed motherfucker.
Wait a minute. Are you crazy? You want to be fired from this?
I will say, in John's defense, if he called me a little bitch, I would have fucking flipped out.
Really?
Yeah.
I had the exact opposite reaction. He says, hey, he acted like he's being funny. Like, that's kind of a funny line. They all laugh. He's being a little bitch, but he took it pretty well. He's joking. Also, that's his boss. So to immediately, and this is a pattern that we have learned with John. He did it with Artie Lang, where Artie is goofing on him for thinking Larry the Cable, kissing Larry the Cable Guy's ass. I guess John is buddies with Larry the Cable Guy.
Yep.
And Artie's like goofing on, like, do you really think he's funny? And like goofing on him for that. John elevates that to, well, you fucking drank bleach, Artie. You tried to kill yourself. It's like, whoa, there's a few levels of ball busting before we get there.
Well, I mean, you just fire a guy and then you call him a little bitch. I would be expect. I would.
No, he said he goes. Hey, he whined like a little bitch for a minute, but he took it pretty well.
I know, but you got to understand, he's probably not in a great spot.
We're learning that Craig's a little more like John than we realized.
Totally. You're not going to see me till November.
I think it's a while to immediately go to something that's not talked about on air. Like, you cross-eyed mother. Like, the audience doesn't know anything about this guy's vision or anything, to my knowledge. To the point where even on like Opie and Anthony years later, it was hinted at, like joked about, but never actually mentioned what his issue was.
Mm-hmm.
So I assume it's something the guy wants to keep private. And that's my overall point about John, where it's like he ramps it up from like, you whined like a little bitch to, let me attack your disability. Which, there's a few levels of ball busting, like I said.
Yeah, he skipped a few.
Yeah. But I mean, I think, like you said, it was in the moment. He reacted poorly. And I think after that, he kind of cooler heads prevailed, no?
Take your fucking ass.
Hey, no F words. Sit down.
Calm down, man.
Sit down. Sit down.
His mind.
Chuck, after my air check, how about anal?
Bitch, after he fires me, you're lucky I don't smack you silly.
Don't say the F word.
John, you lost half your job. Don't mess up the other half.
John, seriously, there is a silver lining to this.
And I keep saying, he did say there was good news.
Don't call me a little bitch, Chuck, all right, dude?
John, I'm just screwing around with you.
Guy's half blind.
What does that mean?
Last name is Cross. Ironically, he's cross-eyed.
Oh, stop it.
That's
Stop
clever.
It. That's clever.
It's a lot clever than, whatever.
All right, John, don't give him any good news.
The silver lining just left.
Let's hear the good. I think the silver lining.
Me, he calls me a little bitch after he fires me within 5 minutes.
Take it easy.
Jesus, I mean, God.
Take it easy.
You deserve it.
Jokes.
John, I'm making a joke.
Bastard.
John, I seriously think you handled it pretty well.
Yeah, thank you.
Gee.
There's also, if you want to say like him reacting to being called a little bitch or whatever, there's also a level of anger where it's like you're on the Howard Stern show. You know what I mean? Like to get that viscerally angry like that it doesn't come. It's not a great look for John, I don't think. But also you hear Chuck in there telling me there's a silver lining to this. What I believe that is that John keeps referring to like that show being half his paycheck. Like his paycheck is going to be decreased by half. The idea that they were going to pay him, let's call it $30,000. Let's pretend it's $30,000 a year, probably more.
Yeah.
For an hour. That's of pre-recorded radio. That's pretty insane and probably a smart move by Chuck to eliminate that.
That is literally going to be the most prepared for hour of radio you've ever heard in your life if I'm John.
Yeah, you would think so, right? Yeah, you wouldn't slough it off. But what I assume he's alluding to there is that his pay is either not being decreased fully, like it's not going to go all the way down, or he's keeping all of it, possibly. Because he keeps referring to the silver lining. I'm imagining it's got to do with his pay rate. But John doesn't hear that message. John doesn't hear, hey, your boss is telling you to calm down. And he continues to handle it with, I think, a lot of class.
No, you know what? Seriously, I feel bad. I don't like being fired either. And I'm not happy for you about this. I think it sucks.
It does suck. I don't like doing it. It's an hour a day. I mean, it's just a misplaced hour a day, John. You're a victim of a lot of stuff.
It's an hour to you. It's half my salary to me, Rob.
All right, but he's saying it doesn't fit in with his programming.
No, I understand
that. It sucks
and
for you.
I'm sure the ratings are going to skyrocket.
But if you ran a
all
business,
the little things, though, John. Yeah, I think Gary's making on his way.
If you ran a business, would you keep a guy just because you didn't want him to lose money, or would you try?
I understand that.
You got to hire the.
No. But I'm explaining to Rob why I'm acting, a little upset.
You should be upset.
You don't have to explain it.
Oh no, as I recall, I was a little bitch.
I did that just for the
No, he said
I didn't know you were a comedian.
He said you whined like a bitch.
Yeah.
I didn't say you were.
Which you did, but so what? Everybody reacts their own way.
Speaking of
Julie, if you, and I know it's not going to happen, but if you do get fired, just be happy and don't whine like a little bitch.
He's not saying that.
I didn't even ask you to be happy and not whine like a little bitch. I'm making a joke.
I should have said that was like 10 minutes after the other clip we played.
Yes.
So like everyone had calmed down and then John brought it back up.
He's eating away at him.
Yeah, so that's where you start to see John's ego shining through. Now, I don't know when we heard young timid John just say, like, hey, just play this song. I think it's a good song. Just play it. When we heard that, John, I don't know if he was suppressing that ego or if that never existed. Maybe young John wasn't there and success morphed him into a monster. But either way, regardless of what it was, that's when you start to see a change in John, I think, where he thinks he's a real stupid. Like you hear him say there, the ratings are going to skyrocket. Well, the ratings are there because of Howard anyways. You understand. Like it's not the star Stuttering John spinning records. People are listening to that station because of one man, you know?
Right.
All right. Where are we going now?
We're going back in time, and this is just a random clip of Howard analyzing John.
Oh, all right. Well, I would hate for Howard to be correct with a prediction again.
To be real.
Is this the Howard Stern and Friends thing? I think it might be.
Not yet.
Oh, Jesus. I'm off my game today. Well,
yes, eventually in this string of clips, not this particular clip.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh, then let me set it up because I guess there was something called the Friends of the Howard Stern Show, which was like Jackie, Baba Booey, Stuttering John. I think they would bring other characters like Melrose, Larry Green, and people like that. But it was called Friends of the Howard Stern Show, which is, if you're doing that without permission, pretty ballsy, I would say, you know? So Howard looks at it and says, like, I don't want my name attached to this horse shit. You know, I think he kind of respects Jackie as a comedian, but it's like, what are these other people going to do on stage? So I don't want to be promoted as Friends of the Howard Stern Show. So this is him, analyzing John and, where John thinks he stands in the entertainment world.
Like I turned on the TV the other day and I see Stuttering John.
Hold on a second. That is pre-bass, I think.
Yeah, that didn't exist yet.
It's before the bass in Howard's voice. Jesus.
It caught you by surprise there.
Kermit Stern.
Like I turned on the TV the other day and I see Stuttering John on Ricky Lake because Ganji comes running in and goes, Stuttering John's on Ricky Lake. And I tune in and they're using John in this weird way. It's sort of like when Letterman used to have Larry Bud Melman on and it was funny.
Yeah.
And now he's on everything and it's not funny. And
I don't even want to see him.
And those TV commercials they put him in are not funny. And what happens
Letterman
is
won't use him anymore.
Yeah, you don't see him on Letterman. Now I know why. I mean, because quite frankly, it's not funny. It's not exclusive to his show.
Right.
And I love Stuttering John. I'd love to see him do well and everything, but Ricky Lake isn't really paying him. And he's not out promoting anything. And he doesn't seem to care what people do to him or what they put him in. He doesn't care. He has no pride whatsoever. He'll do anything. So they put him in a judge's robe. And I guess he's sort of like, I don't think Stuttering John's actually worked out a persona on TV. So he's kind of like acts like me. Like he does a lot of what I do. But it's not funny. They use Stuttering John in an unfunny way. And I'm sitting there watching it and I go, ugh, I hate this guy. Why? I don't want him on my show.
And that's the main thing about John is that he was trying to be Howard, but more than that, I think, is that, as Howard is saying there, he doesn't have his own persona. So when he goes on these shows, he's very much Stuttering John from the Howard Stern Show. There is zero separation. It's not like now Stuttering John is trying, like, on his podcast now, he talks about politics. He thinks of himself as this kind of high-minded, insightful political guy. But when he would go on Ricky Lake or Conan or his stage shows, it's not like he was talking politics. He would be the same guy he was on Stern. And when he would go on stage, when he started, quote unquote, stand up, I'm no expert. I just like to call myself an observer of stand up, but I don't know that I would qualify this as stand up comedy. What he would do on these stage shows is play a 15-minute video of his interviews with celebrities, like we heard earlier in this, like with Morton Downing.
Mm-hmm.
A pre-recorded video for 15 minutes, and then he would do like a 5-minute Q&A or something like that.
Wow.
I don't know if that's stand-up comedy, but he considers himself a comedian.
No, it's not.
So Howard is, again, spot on this guy and analyzing himself pretty well. And I think the best point there is like, hey, I would say, like I've had this argument with a Cullinane before about guys at Barstool where they talk about like the OnlyFans stuff. And my argument there is like, hey, Roan and Lil Sass and Francis go out and do stand-up and make their own money. And the company seems fine with that. I think if you're doing something completely separate from what you do for the company, or in this case, for the Howard Stern Show, my opinion, that would be, hey, go for it. It's something totally different. It's something I wouldn't use. That's the main thing. Right. If you're doing something Howard would never use, by all means, go for it.
Yeah.
But this seems to be like all you're doing is tarnishing the other bits where Howard uses you in a similar way. but they're just not doing it as good, you know?
Right.
So that's his main point, but I don't think it ever quite gets through to John. But
yeah, this next one's them talking about John's talent.
John's a tremendously talented guy, so I'm curious what Howard says about that.
It's just a bad show.
John has no noticeable talent. I mean, John is not talented. I hate to break it to him. He's not talented. He's a robot. Jackie and Fred and me write him questions. Jackie sits back there with Fred.
He needs to be programmed.
Yeah. John's funny if Jackie writes something for him or Fred writes something for him.
John is like an actor.
Right.
If he doesn't have anything written for him, he has nothing to say.
Yeah. And unlike an actor who actually has an ability to portray a character, John
can only do John.
Yeah. So that's the assessment of John's talents.
Oh boy.
I mean, talk about spot on. But that's something I'd like to know. Maybe you're going to overstep here a bit and ask for a little help from the dabblers again, if you don't mind. I don't want to put anyone out. But what I would like to know is, has John ever addressed that claim? Because it's something people bring up a lot. And they say, hey, you talk about how great you were on the Stern Show, and you talk about how great these celebrity interviews were. It was all questions that Howard, Jackie, and Fred wrote for you. It's not just talked about in that clip that we heard. People bring that up all the time. If John ever answers that question, I'd love to see that clip, because I'd be very curious what his answer is. All you ever hear about him is talking about how integral he was to the Howard Stern Show. Well, and there's a lot of, you'll hear him talk about the old days, and he'll say, me and Robin and Fred and Gary and Artie or Jackie. He puts himself on that level. He says, us. And he would put, Grillo and Ganji and those people on a lower tier. The way I see it as an outsider, not knowing, the inner workings or anything, I think John was down there with Grillo and Ganji and those people. I don't think John was in the inner circle ever, but he views himself that way. And so that's why I would love to know how he answers that when people say, hey, the stuff you did well at the Stern Show is all because of Howard, Jackie, and Fred. I'd be curious to know what his answer to that was.
Well, if you go and you look earlier in this episode, we played that AJ Benza clip.
Yeah.
If you watch John on the Fly, he goes, what's AJ stand for? Like, always a jerk.
Yeah, arrogant jerk.
Arrogant jerk. like nothing too insane coming out.
Yeah.
There.
And to be fair, maybe John has a great answer. Like if someone said to me, again, to use my example, like, hey, all your shit was with Portnoy playing, spike ball or whatever, I'd say, yeah, I had nothing to do. Technically, I am part of the reason for the success of those videos, but the views are all because of Portnoy. You know what I mean? Like if he wasn't in them, people wouldn't be watching them. So maybe that would be John's answer. But I suspect he wouldn't have that perspective on it.
You have to get him onto a Blind Mike project.
I know. I messed up. I got blocked on Twitter too early. I should have. I made the wrong ally is what I really did. I should not have befriended Carl. I should have befriended John first and then been a double agent.
I'm currently free, so I can make this happen.
All right, go for it.
Yeah.
Do we have anything left? I know we're getting down to the end here.
Oh yeah, we do. This is the Friends of Stern clip.
Okay. Oh, right. We have a lot left, actually. Jesus. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So let's hear about this abomination.
The best of my knowledge.
Some guy had figured out, hey, I'll just book everyone from the Howard Stern Show. We'll get Elephant Boy, we'll get Jackie, we'll get Gary, we'll get Stuttering John, and we'll make it like the traveling
I basically told him I didn't care what happened as long as I got the money that I normally get for doing a show. I didn't care what went on around me because I wanted to work at Atlantic City.
That's my problem. I care what goes on around me, and I care how this show is presented. See, that's my problem. I care about the show. Some guy had this brainy idea that he was going to do Friends of the Howard Stern Show tour. So in other words, they were going to use my name, get everyone that I've developed, even Gary. The reason Gary is people want to see him is because of what I do with him. Mm-hmm. They're going to get all these people together, put no thought into what was going to go. It was going to be a bad show. They're going to rip people off.
And they're going to blame you.
And they're going to blame me.
So what Stuttering John did, and by the way, I think that's very smart of Howard. And you hear Jackie there say, "Hey, I just want to get paid. I don't care." I think that's the difference in their careers and why Howard had the success that he did. because Jackie was like, hey, let me get paid for a gig. And Howard was much more meticulous about how people viewed him.
Doesn't seem like he paid very many people around him.
No, well, very select, because I mean, Fred and Robin are millionaires.
Well, now.
And Baba Booey.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't know the answer to that. I think it was a very elite group, very few people. Like Artie was making $800,000 a year or something like that.
Yep.
So it was not many people, but I think if he felt you had value, and that's the problem that John never understood, is in Howard's mind, he would say, you know what? I'd hate to lose John. I think he's good in this spot and this spot and this spot, but the train keeps moving if he's gone tomorrow. Whereas for whatever reason, whether you agree or disagree with this, he looks at Robin as like, I need her. You know what I mean? Like she's valuable to me.
Oh, she's very valuable to the show.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people would disagree. Just if you go on like the Radio Gunk or something like that, a lot of people would disagree. I agree with you.
That voice is the show,
and Howard is Howard would be aligned with you as well. And he looks at people like John as interchangeable. We'll find some other stutterer or freak of some kind, to do what you do.
I love that though. Going back, he's got to stutter. Bring him in.
Yeah. That's what I meant to mention. So Stuttering John and Friends became a thing, and that's where Howard draws the line. And like you said, maybe he doesn't pay people, and John would say he doesn't want anyone making money, but he allows things like he allowed Ronnie the limo driver's block party and that type of stuff. And he would allow John to do Stuttering John and Friends, which is basically John puts his name on it and the friends do all the work. So some of the friends were Nick DiPaolo, Artie Lang, Jim Norton. Tell me if you wouldn't go see a comedy night with those gentlemen.
I sure would.
Yeah, but Stuttering John opens with like clips of himself and then took all the money, I guess, is my understanding.
Sounds
is that
right.
he made out with the large chunk of change. So, he saw himself as more than the show, more than he was, and yet never did anything to show that value. And that was true of his stand-up as well, where there was never a thought in his mind like, hey, my name is on this. And Artie, Nick, and Norton, when they were doing this, were not, I mean, this is obviously before Norton was on Opie and Anthony, so he was a nobody, essentially.
Right.
But there was never a moment of John saying, like, hey, these guys are killer. These guys are great comics. I have to keep up with them. I have to not just keep up with them. I have to do better than them because my name is on this thing.
Right.
No, it was, let's collect the check.
Let's mail it. I'm going to mail it in, Jimmy Norton.
Yeah. So, so the Stuttering John and Friends was a thing for a while. And then John said, now we're at he's leaving for the Tonight Show, right?
No, this is actually one of my favorite clips was Howard asking him, "Are you funny?"
Okay, yeah, let's hear that.
Jump on too, right? Jump on the bandwagon.
I got to be honest with you.
I saw you on Ricky Lake. You're
Can I
real
just say
funny.
one thing?
I saw you on Ricky Lake.
Howard,
what was
can I
that?
just say one
You
thing?
don't care how you're embarrassed, do you? You want to just be on fun. You think you're a funny guy, don't
Howard,
you?
can
Do
you
you think you're funny? Answer me, yes
Sometimes,
or no.
yes.
You think you're funny?
Sometimes.
All right. You are now fired. Go out and be funny on your own.
Okay,
Thank you.
Howard,
Goodbye. Goodbye. I'm tired of taking you and resurrecting you every 10 minutes.
Now, listen, if you're looking at Carl's bank account or Shuli's Patreon now with the Uncle Rico show, you could argue, hey, John's very funny on his own. He's just lining the pockets of other people.
That's a very good point.
So yeah, John disagrees with Howard and saw himself as more than that. And one day he got a call from Jay Leno. So my understanding of this is, and again, John will constantly say Howard never allowed anyone around him to make money. And believe me, I'm sure Howard Stern could be a prick at times and could be greedy and was looking out for himself more than his underlings. I believe that certainly could be true. But there's also things like that completely did, like John was on Wings. And the sole reason Wings had him on, Wings was a sitcom in the early 90s, for those of you that don't know.
course.
And starring Tony Shalhoub, by the way. Monk, great actor.
Shalhoub.
Anyways, the reason John was on there is because Wings wanted to advertise, hey, we've got Stuttering John on. Hey, all you listeners of the Howard Stern Show, you going to come watch Wings now? So John was on Wings. He was on Baywatch. He was on, he had a few like bit parts like that, much like Eric the Midget, because he was involved with the Stern Show. That he was not a great actor. That people just wanted to get some eyeballs on their product. Howard Wood,
he was great in Baywatch.
He was terrific. Yes, he was a great villain. But Howard would allow these things, and one of the things he allowed towards the end of John's run was John was on a reality show called "I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here." Apparently, a very loose title.
Yeah.
And so he did that show, and that's where he was noticed. Because I think he also did an appearance on the Tonight Show promoting that, and that's where he was noticed by one Jay Leno. And Leno was obviously aware that, this is the guy that goes on the red carpet. Maybe he's a funny guy. Maybe I should give him a call and recruit him for the Tonight Show. So John is on the biggest radio show on the planet and now being recruited by the biggest late night institution. You could argue the biggest television institution of all time.
Yeah, you can understand why his head maybe inflates a bit.
Would be the Tonight Show, yeah. So, there's a little controversy over John's departure with the Tonight Show and why he doesn't have a relationship with them anymore. So now we're getting into that.
Yeah, this is a honor.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see if how much honor John has.
I was working.
It's a sellout.
No. Robin, I don't make any money here. I make a very small amount of money.
So why couldn't you come and say?
15 years.
So why didn't you come
I didn't
and say
expect
it
Tom to ever pay me. In fact,
come on.
hold on a second. I was once in Tom's office, and Tom told me.
Here we go. Right. I know. I'd rather die than give you a raise. How many times are you going to use that line?
And did he give you a raise, though?
Is that not
He
true?
did.
No, he didn't that time.
Sure he did.
No,
But he's given you one since.
And by the way,
since.
By the way. And that's not the conversation.
Hold on a second. Why does John dismiss that?
Which part?
He's like, he's so the context is Tom Chiasano, the station, I think he was the GM at the time.
Yep.
John walked in his office and asked for a raise, and Tom said, what was the line? I'd rather die than give you a raise or something like that.
Pretty funny.
Yeah. But after that, he did give him a raise. So John shrugs that off as, since, big deal. And it's like, well, John, that proves the guy would give you a raise. So I don't know. That is a big deal.
It is. He just wanted to live in L.A.
Yeah, well, I think John saw some dollar signs. Maybe saw that working with Jay Leno could lead to him not being goofed on as much. Jay is not as mean as Stern. That the Tonight Show just doesn't have that vibe where John is going to be bullied in the same manner. So maybe John said, hey, it's an opportunity. I'm making more money and it might be a better situation.
Guess how much money?
So let me go out to California. And John really toiled over this decision. It was very tough on him. So, but Howard and Fred and the gang have some questions. So let's hear a little more about that.
You and Steve sat there and told me, what else are you going to do anyway? I mean, John,
so you're angry. That's why you did
what
it.
I'm saying, Tom
you're being
suddenly,
dishonest
somehow I was going to get money from Tom.
Maybe,
ask everybody in this company.
Maybe in light of the fact that you got a job, you use it. You come to me. Listen, forget about Tom. You come to me and you say, hey, I got a job. What do you think? You think maybe this will break Tom's bank? You say it.
Well, I don't think Tom would ever.
It's okay. You wanted to leave.
Tom's never paid me in the past.
So now the anger's coming out.
And Tom is never paying anybody in the past.
I wouldn't know about that.
Well, ask anyone in this company. I could bring 20 people in here to say, does Tom pay you?
But even I said to you, it's better
Pause
to
for a second, Craig. I'm sorry. Maybe this is just because it's happening today. We're recording this on the Thursday that this all went down. Does this not remind you a lot of Rico Bosco?
Yeah.
It's very weird. It's eerie almost.
Except, it's this. I don't know.
Anyways, I'm sorry. Continue.
People want
to even get already a raise in 2 years.
But why
you probably could have gotten more money out of Leno.
But why not say, hey, maybe I could play this off?
Right.
Because you wanted to go to...
because I thought that was dishonorable, sit and try and play.
No.
That's what you do.
Oh, when are you worried about being honorable?
Yeah, so John wanted to get the fuck out of there. He was not worried about honor. He wanted to get the fuck out of there. He never wanted to say, hey, Howard, can you match this offer? Because he would rather be at the Tonight Show. He knew, to his credit, he knew Howard wasn't going to surpass that offer. Maybe he'd come close to matching it. And he said, hey, if it's going to be the same money, I'd rather be in Hollywood than, be a phone screener, Yeah. And as much as Howard's saying, hey, maybe we would have given you a raise, the numbers that John was making for the Tonight Show has been thrown out. Basically, people think it's between $250,000 and $400,000 a year.
$1,000 a day.
Yeah, that's right. But $1,000 a day, as he said in the past. Howard's not going to pay that to a phone screener, I don't think.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, unless I'm wrong about how much he values John, I really don't think he's going to pay that much.
I think he values him, but not that high.
Right. Yeah, so, but yeah, let's, this is Fred calling him out, right?
This is them just talking about John leaving.
Oh, okay.
I think I think this goes out of order, and this is before he walked in.
Gotcha.
Hey, it's also a shame that Stuttering John's last day's today, and now we're talking about this all the time.
Hey, you know what, though? Mel was talking about that. He goes,
oh, yeah.
John's a traitor.
I'm sorry. Yeah. This is, again, kind of Howard using Mel in the same way he uses the callers, where, Howard thinks this, but he's just like, hey, listen, I'm a nice guy, but this is what Mel Karmazin thinks.
Yeah.
Hey, it's also a shame that Stuttering John's last day's today, and now we're talking about this all the time.
Hey, you know what, though? Mel was talking to me about that. He goes, John's a traitor. I go, really? What is that all about? He goes, look, he said, what you did for this guy, there was nobody on the planet. He couldn't pick up the phone and call you beforehand or go to you in the hall. He goes, at least say to you, hey, something's up. Jay Leno's a big con man, rip-off guy. Maybe we could have done something for the guy. He goes, but he totally abandoned ship. He did it on the sly so that, nothing would get screwed up for him. He wasn't interested in staying with the show, and he wasn't interested in being with the people who would really, where would he be without us? And he says, he's dead to me.
Oh, well, I knew that. Mel, you don't leave. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he says, you don't even know when you're being screwed by a dude. He goes, what, he couldn't come to you and say, hey, something's going on here? And maybe, I want to be with the most cutting-edge show on the planet and not on some wimpy...
He doesn't want that. That's for sure. You don't leave this to go to Jay Leno if you want to be cutting edge.
Yeah, and if to go on a limpy, lame show that's going to only rip off my material...
Yeah, so I assume that was not entirely Mel Karmazin's idea.
No, I don't think so.
Seems like a little Howard was seeping through there.
You could see Howard thinking of what he was thinking while saying what Mel said.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and this is all Mel Karmazin, by the way. All right, what's next?
His house in L.A.
Yeah, so this is Fred calling him out. So the whole argument is, so right there you hear Mel and Howard calling him out for kind of being a snake. And the whole argument is like, did you really want to stay here? And the answer, of course, is no, because he would have gone to them and said, hey, I kind of want to, I got this offer. I kind of want to stay here. Can you come close to matching it, whatever? And this is Fred exposing that, that's obviously the case, that he didn't want to be there anymore.
I got an email about 2 weeks ago saying you bought a house in California.
Yeah.
Sent the email.
Untrue.
Hold on. The truth accidentally slipped out.
Yeah.
John goes, yeah. No.
I got an email about 2 weeks ago saying you bought a house in California.
Yeah.
Sent the email.
Untrue.
But do you have a house in California?
You named the town. You named the town. B, you got the price wrong. And C, I don't want to...
Did you buy a house in California?
It doesn't matter.
Yes,
I don't know.
Did you buy a house
where I'm living?
in California?
He's just asking if you bought a house in California.
Before you announced on this show and before you told Howard?
Yes.
Okay,
so how long did you know about it?
I mean, so what does that
I'd say there's some deception. By the way,
hold on. No. Hold on.
Some deception.
Here's the truth, Howard. Here's
the truth.
When it serves a purpose, you tell the truth.
If I want to, first of all, I don't have to buy that house. Okay, that's A. B, if I want, I could flip that house already for an incredible profit.
But that doesn't make it why you bought it.
Yeah, he's like the Property Brothers. He's just flipping homes.
What's that have to do with anything?
Yeah, you could flip it. You wouldn't have bought it if you didn't want to move out there, John. That's the whole point. You're missing the point. So that's what John, I was going to say, is great at. That's what John thinks he's great at, is diverting the argument, but it's very transparent what he's doing.
Yeah.
He bought a house out there because he knew he was going out there no matter what. He's like, I'm fucking out of here. And that's what he wanted to do. So there's also, the timeline gets even more fuzzy when it's presented that John made an audition tape for Jay as the announcer of the Tonight Show. And as Artie always points out, he was a guy that got a stutter. A guy that has a stutter was hired to be the announcer of the Tonight Show. We have tape of him using the N-word in Nicolas Cage's name. That's how badly he pronounces it. The guy that's announcing the Tonight Show accidentally says the N-word inside of Nicholas. Yeah, it's a pretty wild situation. But of course, he did leave for the Tonight Show. So, like I said, we're kind of winding down here. We only have like 2 clips left, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so we're winding down here. If you guys want, we will do a bonus episode on Patreon. Let me know. I think I totally understand the dabblers probably have more than enough Stuttering John content out there. But if you like the way we did it, I hope we presented it in a somewhat different way than it's usually done. And I kind of like the, lining it up rather than just finding like random clips of him.
Mm-hmm.
The way we kind of walked through his life. So hopefully you guys find that interesting. And if you do, then we will do a bonus episode on Patreon, a part 2, because there's much more in John's, post-Howard career. But of course, he went on to the Tonight Show. So let's hear a little bit of that. This is from his first day with Leno.
Very excited tonight. We have our new announcer today. New announcer, John Melendez today. And I must say, which makes me, I'm very excited because this means I've created one more job this year than President Bush. So I'm actually created. Now, John, you have to relax. All the monologue, he's sitting like this. Learn to relax. Are you relaxed?
Oh, Jay, I'm so relaxed.
Good. Now, stop doing that stupid announcer voice. But
I'm so happy to be here.
Good. Well, we're happy to have you. I'm sorry your tie must have got lost in the plane coming over. But it's nice to have you, John. Welcome. How about a nice hand for John Melendez?
Him going not even dressed correctly.
Yeah, him going from the Stern clip of him flipping out wearing like a shit t-shirt and like all this. Cut to this, he's in a suit with nice hair and no tie.
He couldn't even bring his tie the way Jay wanted. But so the legend has it, the word on the street is that like I said before, Jay thought that John wrote those questions, like the questions he would ask celebrities. And you'll see if you watch Jay's show, Jay has a few segments like that where, as Howard would say, he's ripping him off. Where Jay, jaywalking, where he would go out on the street and talk to people, or he would have that, Ross, the intern, I think did what he wanted John to do, and that's go ask celebrities questions at red carpet events and things like that. So, in Jay's mind, Jay was for whatever reason, was under the impression that John wrote those questions. So they said, hey, we're bringing this fucking genius in. Meanwhile, and I'm sure in conversations, John probably portrayed it that way, that he was the mastermind behind those questions. And legend has it, I can't confirm how true this is, but people say that supposedly Jay was furious when he realized the talent level of one John Melendez. Now, the other angle to that is whether or not he felt John was talented. People say that the hiring was done solely to annoy Howard. Jay and Howard had a rivalry. Howard says that Jay's comedy is lame, which hard to argue based on that clip, but also that Jay would rip him off constantly. That Jay would steal bits from the Howard Stern show. Now, Howard would accuse everyone of stealing from him. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to say, but there are things where it's like, yeah, that's a Howard creation that Jay is using, kind of. So in their rivalry, he said, hey, let's get this stuttering idiot to be our announcer. Just it'll piss Howard off. That's funny. So supposedly that's the story of John landing on the Tonight Show. Now it went so disastrously that first they put him in the audience, which credit to Shuley for this line, I believe, or I think it might have been Bob Levy on the Uncle Rico show, where they were like, "Have you ever heard of an announcer sitting in the audience? He's literally sitting in the studio audience." They put him in like the second row to announce the show from, and Bob Levy said, I think Jay was just hoping he would get up and file out at the end of the show and not come back. So yeah, he was moved to the audience, which was weird. They were annoyed that like the idea of bringing him in, part of his job was supposed to be him and Jay bantered the way Conan and Andy Richter would, or obviously Johnny and Ed McMahon. That was going to be John's job. And then John pivoted back to Kevin Eubanks because Jay pivoted to Kevin Eubanks because he had no interest in talking to John anymore. And then eventually John lost the job as the announcer and they made him a writer. My understanding was, I don't know how much he contributed on the writing staff. He was there physically. I don't know how many jokes got on the air, but that's the trajectory of John's time at the Tonight Show. He also went with him to the Jay Leno show at 10 o'clock and then back when Jay took the Tonight Show back from Conan. And then his last professional role. Do you know who Stephanie Miller is?
No.
Neither do I, really. So she got a show. I think it's still on Sirius XM. It was at the time for sure. I think she's like one of these political people like John Fugelsang that's like super liberal and does a political talk show, but also kind of fancies himself a comedian of some kind. Sirius has a few of those, like Pete Dominic, John Fugelsang. Excuse me. So John was hired as a producer on this show. Again, I think fooling someone, because I believe that Stephanie Miller was under the impression, hey, this guy worked for the biggest radio show ever. He must have some production skills. So he was hired there and it did not go well. So this is him talking about that experience a little bit.
Fine. Stephanie Miller was horrible to me. She's been horrible to a lot of people, and she deserves her comeuppance. Okay? I don't give a fuck.
I'm sorry.
She deserves
By the way, listen to that voice.
Yeah, it came.
Oh my God, the booze has taken a toll on this.
She deserves a comeuppance.
Comeuppance.
That's more the voice when I think of him. That's the one I think of.
Yeah, it's honestly amazing. I can't think of another example. Like the podcast Tuesdays with Stories with Mark Norman and Joe List.
They have the same voice.
They have very distinct voices. But you know what's fascinating to me about that, and I think about this all the time. If you listen to the intro of their show, it was recorded 10 years ago when the show started. And I'm like, Jesus, their voices are exactly the same. It's weird. John is just the opposite, where you're like, this is the same guy?
The way he says comeuppance is so funny.
Yeah, so sorry, let's continue.
Fine. Stephanie Miller was horrible to me. She's been horrible to a lot of people, and she deserves her comeuppance. Okay? I don't give a fuck that she's on the same side of the political scheme as I am. I don't care. I don't care. You know, my father had just died, and she gave me 2 days to recover.
I'm curious your thought on this, Craig.
Mm-hmm.
A parent dies. John here is in his early 50s, I think.
Yeah.
I think his father had lived a life. I think he was an older gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
Or he certainly was an older gentleman, but I don't know how old exactly.
Yeah.
How many days would you say is fair to get off for that?
To get off?
Yeah, get off of work?
At least a week.
Oh, okay. All right. I didn't know. In my mind, I was like, that's not that crazy. 2 days, you know?
I don't know. A parent's tough. I know.
But I'm just saying a parent, when it's like that, I don't know how expected it was. So maybe I shouldn't even comment. But to me, I was like, that's not that insane, I didn't think, you know? But
I don't know. I'd have to think.
Anyways,
I'd be a mess.
We'll hear the rest of John's argument. All right, I'm only hearing him out.
And work the board as she deemed appropriate, which, by the way, wasn't really the way. I mean, I'm looking at the levels. She was way too hot. But, you know, I don't care. Stephanie Miller is out of all the bosses I've had in my life, is by far the worst. And that's the truth. Howard Stern is an angel next to Stephanie Miller. Because there's different ways. There's different ways to be abusive. And Stephanie's is the passive-aggressive way.
Well, I would suggest that the other way is physical. So I would take passive-aggressive any day.
Yeah, passive aggressive is probably way worse than a show that gets listeners and being berated the whole time.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot more to that Stephanie Miller stuff that I wanted to include, and there's some more stuff to the Tonight Show stuff that I wanted to include.
Part
but
2,
I just
baby.
knew this would take so long.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? If you guys want, this will be part 1. We'll do part 2 on Patreon if necessary. Like I said, those guys have done a pretty good job at covering it. So if you're new to Stuttering John, if you haven't listened to Carl and Shuli, go listen to Who Are These Podcasts and the Uncle Rico Show. They've done some pretty deep dives over the years. So go check them out. But if you guys want kind of this, I don't know, organized anthology of Stuttering John, then I'd be happy to do it, because there's plenty more there in his post-professional broadcasting career when he turned to podcasting. So maybe we'll do that down the line. But yeah, like I said, he's become one of the biggest goofed on people on the internet. And it'll be interesting to see. Also, I kind of like the time we chose to do this, because John has taken a break from his podcast. His Patreon is on hold, and he's supposed to come back in January. There are all kinds of rumors. He was in rehab. He's moving in with his mom. No one really knows what's going on with John right now. So after this podcast comes out, it'll be interesting to see where John goes after that. So while we may do a Stuttering John part 2, there may be a second act in John's life. Maybe he's going to come back revamped. Maybe he's going to take down Carl. Maybe me and John are going to be doing this social media podcast together.
Or he's going to be like, this is my new MAGA hat.
Yeah, maybe he'll be a Trump guy. Who knows what's in store for the great Stuttering John. But we're here to watch it and observe. So, let us know what you guys think of the episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope we did it a little different. That we're not just jumping on the coattails of Carl and Shuli, but hope you guys enjoyed it. And shout out to the Dabblers, because they put a ton of stuff out there. It's crazy the archives they have on this guy. Just shout out to Dabblers Anonymous.
And we apologize for asking for anything.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't know the rules. I'm terribly sorry. No, I thought it was funny that the guy was like, oh, great. Another fucker I have to do work for.
I like how they don't say no. They're just going to give you shit while they do it.
Yeah, like I'm assigning them hours.
It's like, give me a minute.
All right, fine. No, shout out to all of them. So if you like the program, if you want to support us, if you want to put a few dollars behind this puppy and get a little extra content, then subscribe to the Patreon. We'd love to have you back there. We do all kinds of wacky stuff.
Yeah.
So go check out the Patreon. Or if you'd rather support the show for free, then you can do that on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere you get podcasts. All of those links are at blindmike.net. So go subscribe, please. Blindmike.net is where you go. And listen to WATS. That's me and Carl. And check out Very Good Show. That's Craig's podcast.
Yeah, it's fun time there.
It's a fun romp.
Yeah. Just read a suicide note from a guy who killed himself at Disney World. It was a great time.
Really?
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out. I'm interested. Yeah, so go listen to Very Good Show if you like that sort of jocularity. And we'll talk to you guys next time on Why Are You Laughing?